May you prosper as your soul prospers. May your heart forever be in posture to receive the mercy and the glory from above.
If there's anything that airports have taught me, it's that, oh my gosh, goodbyes are so emotional, but also there's always a purpose in your transition. Okay, now that sounds really deep, but you know what I mean? Like when you get to an airport, not only are you looking at what I'm leaving behind, but you're looking at where I'm going. And that's what I got to discuss with Nigel Chikwiramadara in our chat titled How Will I Know? Talking about your identity and your purpose and what moving away from home to a whole nother city can do to all of that. Join me and have a great old listen to what Nigel has to say about his moving from Zimbabwe to Melbourne and what he learned about not only himself, but even God.
Here's a beautiful thing that I sort of like learned. There's this verse in the Bible which tells us that God, first of all, completes. After he completes, that's when he confirms. After he confirms, that's when he strengthens. After he strengthens, that's when he establishes.
Right.
So the really big fact here is that he completes something before it started. So whatever purpose that God has in your life, he has already completed it. He says that I've even known you before you were formed in your mother's womb. He has sort of like pre-written what you have, not taking all the suggestions or all the ambitions that you want to do in your special life. He cares for that. But it's just that he has set in your life according to his will and fit you in a perfect spot that you have to firstly know what God has got in plan for you. And the confirmation part is the second part after it completes. Because I feel that where it's like where everyone's sort of like hanging. And for me, I was hanging in that void for, I think about 6 or 7 years, just trying to see, what do you want me to do, God? Like, like, you know, after you're a Christian, you're sort of like, what now? Like, you're asking yourself, what should I do now? So I was in that void for quite a bit. I was the guy who was waiting in church every single time when every pastor was on the pulpit, prophesying to people, saying, can you see me? Like, I know God has called me, but just can you confirm that? Like, that kind of feel. So I was, even at church, even at worship, I was just like expecting to hear it from that perspective. But it wasn't up until we went for a Hillsong conference. It was back in 2019. And I was serving as well part of the team. And the whole conference went throughout and it literally ended up until the last day. That's where we were saying goodbye to people. We got really emotional, people crying at the doors because they were literally that bond that you've created with the people for the whole week. And understanding that, now I had people from Hillsong conference just come up to me and start to confirm these beautiful and wonderful things that God is doing in my life. And it's something that they wouldn't have known by any chance because I'd never told anyone. And the first person came through, she told me God has got this and he's got you in that position. And keep on doing what you're doing. In some sense, I was like, God, thank you. I know I was waiting for a pastor, but this will do. This will do because that's different.
Facts.
Second person came through again, and said the exact same thing. And then I was like, God, if this is you confirming, I love this. Like, this is just as beautiful as it can get. Mind you, it's someone who's been waiting for 7 years for this confirmation, but it hasn't come yet. And before I even walked down the hallway, someone came through again, same exact word. The third person. And I was like, God, I think that's enough. Thank you. I think I'll never ask again. I'm okay. This is it. And before we finished that conference, another person came again, the fourth person. I'm like, okay, this is crazy, but at the same time, if God can confirm a word that much with 4 different people, and by the way, I'd literally love to keep in touch with all those people, just telling them how God is taking me through all the plan. Never forgetting them, like the butler. He forgot about Joseph in there. That was a good move. So it's one of those things that when you're waiting for his confirmation, you are looking at something other than looking at him. So I was busy looking at preachers rather than looking at him. That's why he never spoke through the preachers. If he spoke through the preachers, it means that I'm going to give a certain value on that preacher, and I'm not going to give value on him. So he had to withhold himself. So him talking through someone else, him coming in as a gardener, after he died, he came in as a gardener because Mary literally saw him, and then he was thinking that Jesus is a gardener, and then he was like, after he spoke now, that's when he was like, oh, Rabbi, there you are, because she now understood that this is the voice of God for some reason. So it's, God uses those humble opinions. That person that you're looking down at work is the person that God will use. The person that you're looking down in the train is the person that God will use for some sense. Yeah, so I think that is really like directional in some sense. After he confirms, he establishes, because now he strengthens you, because you now need the power. After that, it's sort of like, God, okay, you've confirmed that. Now what should I do? You now feel like powerless in some sense of saying, okay, like what's my next step? Like where should I now go? Like after you've confirmed it, like after you've confirmed everything, you're like, where should I go now? Should I go back to Marcus, or should I go should I do what? But now it's sort of like every single conversation that I've been having after that, it was now in a really directional move, knowing that this is where I'm headed. So if I'm going to be focusing my attention on someone else, it's for their gain, because my gain is already satisfied in God. Yeah, so you're now thinking in building other people's perspective, practicing your role, read books. Like that's something that I would say. If you think that you're going to be a great tennis player, you have to study that sport as if you have never studied someone else. Yeah. Condolences to Mamba mentality. This is a really great basketball player that everyone literally looked up to in a perspective of the sport himself. He mastered the sport, and he just mastered how he went through everything that his family coming up, his basketball. And that mentality of just locking yourself into something is that mentality that you need to do now in a perspective. Now you know that you've got a goal, you've got a talent. It's either you're going to sit on it, or it's either you're going to multiply it, as you were saying, like to one was given 1 talent, to other was given 3 talents, and to other one was given like 5 talents. So if you multiply that, that's God's second, that's your gift to God for some sense, So it's quite directional when it comes to you digging forwards what you're looking into life.
100%. And what you just said reminded me of this quote I read. It was like, worship is giving God his breath back. And I feel like, whether you're singing a song or you're building a house, or like, there's even that verse that says, whatever you do, do it as if you're doing it for God. And I think like in our talents, whether you're playing basketball, being a civil engineer, being a journalist, like everything that you're doing, do it to a standard as if I'm giving this back to God. Because essentially he gave us the breath of life, and he's like, do something with that oxygen that I've given you. Don't waste it. And every morning that we wake up, I guess those are the things that we can remind ourselves. So
we can't all be preachers in some sense. We need to have bakers, farmers, because we need food.
Preachers gotta eat.
The preachers gotta eat too. So everything that you do, God is working towards with you, and He's sort of like, you're working for the church perspective, not just like the people that you see at church preaching or standing on the pulpit are the people who matter. They're the guys who are doing filming. They're at the back of the room, but they're the ones who are spreading this word, this beautiful word everywhere else. So everyone matters. You matter wherever you are. Like, because wherever you are, if there's people, there's a purpose.
100%.
Yes. If there's not a person, then definitely you all don't have a purpose over there. Are you living in space or something?
Yes.
I don't know. But but yes, wherever there's people, that was something that I got to really get comfort in when it came up to coming to Australia. Because leaving the whole group of people that were doing church like every morning, afternoon and evening, coming to this place was just like a shot in the dark. But knowing that there's people as well there that need help, there's people as well that need friends, that need like a certain, you're never to do life alone. You need a connect group. You need people that follow you. You need people that are around you, that surround you. And all that is part of your purpose.
100%. That is a great word of advice.
Great.
And I guess for the last question I was actually going to ask you was, how did you know? But you pretty much answered that, at conference. But there was something that you touched on, the waiting period. Between thinking and then knowing. Like having an assumption, like maybe this is what God's called me to do. I'm going to pray about it and wait.
So it's the moment before confirmation, is it? Because you're sort of like deciding, what should I do? Is this it? You start testing things out. If you don't test anything, you won't end up with anything. It's a thing that you should love as well, because if you don't love that thing, it's sort of like there's no reason for you to do it because you're not giving your all to it. So in that waiting period of not knowing where you are headed, it's a point that you should be really out there, casting your bread upon the waters, not just sitting on just one thing. So I would say it ties back into that provocation thing that you're sort of like doing. Are you testing some things out? Are you trying some new jobs? Are you trying some new perspectives? If you love preaching, are you looking for a platform? Are you looking for people that you're speaking into day-to-day life? In doing that, that's where God confirms it. But if you are sort of like looking more into what you're supposed to be doing instead of looking into what God is doing in your life, God is at a position that He should withhold that you're looking to because you're giving that more value. Because you can easily idolize your purpose.
100%.
You can easily idolize your purpose because your purpose is something that is greater than you. But at the same time, if you're putting it greater than God, it means that God has to stop that. And then and He will stop that. So I find it when I figured out my purpose, it was because I was too immersed in God and God revealed Himself to me. So it wasn't because I was hungrily looking for my purpose, but it was because I was hungrily looking for Him. And He's the one who directs your steps. He's the one who directs, like we all make plans, but God is the one who directs every single step that you do. So in that perspective, I would say, I think people need to be focused more on Him. And then, like, look at Jesus. Every time He was going up into the mountain to pray. And then after He prayed, He came down and started healing people. But the disciples were down, failing to heal the same person, trying, and then literally the demon was beating them up. So, you might want to spend all your time in your craft. But if you spend more time in your craft rather than you do in God, it means that God is supposed to be stopping your craft at all, although it's something that is good. So spend time in God as much as you can, and God will reveal what He wants you to do, because He says, ask and it will be given unto you. Like, what you need to do is to ask. He didn't say, ask, toil, and then I will do it for you. So if you're going to be going down on your knees, getting to that, like, God's intimacy, your friendship, your intimacy, because I think hearing from God is a big part of understanding your purpose. Because if you can't hear from God, then it means that you can't know what your purpose is from God. So how you hear from God, like we can hear from our families. We can hear from the friends that are around you. They try to define you. They try to tell you who you are. But at a certain point in time, you just go back and say, I don't think that's true. And then after God confirms it for you, now you are now naked. You are now like, that's plain. That's where you are literally rushing down in tears because you now have discovered yourself. So I think it's more of hearing what God has to say, and hearing from God is knowing what the Holy Spirit is saying to you in that sense. Just that personal and intimate relationship that is sweeter than anything else.
It really is. You know, I feel like this interview kind of just comes back to the purpose of temples, discovering our identity in Christ and pursuing our purpose in God. And I feel like all the things that you just spoke about, just even today, just really ties back down to that. So thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much. It's really good.
I mean, is there any like final words that you have for anyone? Or I guess maybe we could end on a note, like, what word of advice would you give to Nigel, who had just moved to Melbourne? So you found yourself right now at the airport. You come from Zimbabwe. What word of advice could you give to him about this journey he's about to?
Looking back 2 years ago, I think I would say, stop trying to rediscover yourself. Stop trying to rediscover yourself in the eyes of people who don't really care about you at all. Because I got to this stage that my English wasn't that good. And I knew that my English wasn't that good, but at a certain time I had to wear a facade as if it is. So I would give that advice to myself, saying, you knew who you were before you came to Australia, and that is pretty much rooted in Christ. That is rooted in like what your mama told you for some reason, forcing you to go to church every single time, and learn to adapt. Learn to adapt into different environments. Like if you treat everyone the same, then that is not going to work because everyone is different. You have to treat everyone accordingly and rightfully in a certain way. Like if you're going to be treating your grandma the same as you're treating your friends, that's going to be the weirdest conversation you ever had. So I think I would go back again and say, stop preloading some templates for everyone before you meet them. Have a specified conversation with someone, and just I think lean more into who you are meant to be rather than who you ought to be, in some sense. Because who you ought to be is something that is just in your mind, is something that you're obsessing yourself with. I want to be a millionaire, I want to be this, but your journey to being a millionaire is what solution are you finding to a problem that will actually get you the money that you're looking for. But if you are seeking the money, Nigel, that's not going to be giving you anything for some sense. You should seek for problems more than you do for money so that you can solve that problem. So I saw that in an earlier age, and then I was like, I need to start doing this in a really big perspective. And I think that's what I would look back and just, not like I made many big bad decisions, but it should be.
You live and you learn.
Yeah, you live and you learn. You live in a really changing world too, so it gives you a really big platform of readjusting who you are and a little bit less of Netflix, I guess. That's true. Just a little bit less of Netflix. That should be quite okay.
Netflix is a problem. It can be a real addiction, let's be honest. But it is nice for a little wind down. I think Netflix in moderation.
Like a little bit of like everything taken in large amounts is quite bad. Because I got to a stage that you're binging series, and that series is now taking first place now. It's not taking. God is no longer on that first place. That series is now occupying that first place for some reason. So, if there's one thing that I would say take away from this conversation is speak more to God than you do to any other person. If I'm talking to you for an hour now, I have to put in my mind that I have to go and talk to God for an hour and 1 minute. I have to, because God says, I am a jealous God. And if you're going to be investing more time in talking to someone else other than God, I would say it just uproots you from that perspective of knowing who you are. So if you're going to be knowing your God more than you do anyone, you don't need anyone to tell you to kneel down in worship because that's your normal position. You don't need anyone to tell you to lift up your hands when you're worshiping because that's your normal position. But if you are starting it on a Sunday thing, closed on a Sunday, if you're doing it in a Sunday thing, you're sort of like just waiting for a certain environment for you to worship God. And I think that God is not really happy of that kind of worship. Although He charges us for the week, but you still need to know Him, to understand who He is during the whole week. And knowing Him is the root of your purpose. It's the root of where you're going.
Awesome. That is a beautiful summary, Nigel. Thank you so much for that.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure having a chat with you.
100%,
and I look forward to where you're going in your purpose. Because
and
I know you're
always supporting this. Literally, this is so good.
Thanks, Nigel. We're looking at a world changer, guys. I'm just saying. You
That's
better
right.
watch out for Nigel.
The world journalist right here.
2 world changers. What is it? But yes. Honestly, I feel really at peace now, and I feel there's so much that I can learn from you and your story, and just purpose. I think that's a really big thing. Like when I look at you and I look at your life and I look at where you're striving to be and where you are right now, purpose it just rings in my head. So I really appreciate you just sharing that with us.
That's great. Thank you. Actually, it's so good.
My pleasure. Well, guys, stay tuned for the next video, guys. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and look out for more videos coming soon. So, if you have any questions for Nigel, where can people find you?
Oh my gosh, I'm signing autographs now.
That's
good.
That's it. You can find me on the tennis courts. Or
tennis courts. Or you can find me in the tennis court. That's the first. You never fail to find me over there. But either way, it's on Facebook. We're there. Nigel Chikwiramadara. I think the name is literally that long, but you figured it out.
Put it in.
Instagram with the Y, not with the I. Just running away from people.
I felt that.
And then the other one, I don't use Twitter, but that should be good. That should be enough.
Instagram, Facebook, and the tennis courts.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks so
plans
much,
have changed.
Nige.
All good.